We're going to move right into our next segment, and we're really excited because we've got JD Enright. Um, uh, JD, our biggest supporter and our rock star. Glad you're here again, sir, and appreciate the interviews you did earlier. The thing with Tori Bruno was brilliant, and I know this one will be just as good. Really excited to have you here. I'll let you introduce your guest, Preston Dunlap, and thanks again for all your support.
Absolutely. Great to be here. Sign me up. I'll be there too to watch that launch. Well, great. Yeah, well, it's been a busy day today. I'd like to introduce a very special guest. I'm honored to have him on here. Preston, it's great to see you again. So we have Preston Dunlop. He is the chief architect of the Department of the Air Force, first to hold this position. Mr. Dunlop is charged with working across the Air Force and Space Force. And in partnership with the Department of the Navy and the Army, he's responsible for over $70 billion in R&D. Preston earned his Master's of Science degree with honors in Operations Research and Management Science from George Mason University, and a Bachelor's of Arts degree in both Computer Science and Political Science from Duke, is a graduate of the Harvard University National Security Senior Executive Program and the Federal Executive Institute, and served on the board of Massachusetts Institute of Technology Seminar 21 program. Preston, great to have you on.
JD, it's a real honor to be here to have this chat with you. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. I think we need to switch to a live feed here. We're showing the different screen here. Do we have a live feed? I guess not. So why don't we go ahead and just jump into it then. Again, Preston, good to see you. We had a nice chat the other day. I've got a number of questions here that have been posed. So why don't we just jump into it? In recent years, DoD leaders have been focusing on ways to make acquisitions happen faster. As the first chief architect, what do you see as the biggest challenge and opportunities in increasing the speed of acquisition, specifically around high-risk segments?
Yeah, JD, it's a great question. Something I'm really, as you know, personally really passionate about. We can have great technology, but if we don't get it in the hands of the people that need it most, we're just not doing our jobs. And that's whether you're in the government or you're outside the government. And so, speed is essential and accelerating that. But of course, at the end of the day, what we really want to have is the right technology in the hands of the warfighter and the operator, and we need to be able to do that. So yeah, let's talk about that. So I think I want to give you a couple kind of specific examples about how we're doing that, and because it's the government, it's perhaps even more complex than if it was a pure commercial play. And of course, I've spent time in commercial companies on the outside, in the university setting, and in government. So I've got just a great opportunity to be able to see how each of those ecosystems tend to work. And maybe I'll kind of boil down into 5 kind of key elements, the things that I think are really important. And the first is like vision and expertise. So if you have the right understanding of how technology and capability works, you don't have to spend a long time evaluating, re-questioning, and evaluating. You know where you need to go. And that's both the recognition internally in the technology world about what opportunities are available. It's also recognizing what potential adversaries are doing and making sure that we can keep pace in an uncertain world, both because we don't know the particular opportunities that will be there or what a potential adversary might do. And so we've got to maintain that agility, but you've got to have really good vision. The second ingredient is really focus. So we can easily sort of lose focus and get the primary thing no longer the primary thing because there are so many distractions and opportunities for sands in the gear. And so we can often focus too much on process and procedure and forget the end user sort of in mind. And then what that ends up doing is we end up either developing something that's not able to be used, even if it's fast, it may not be the right thing. So we failed on your speed question, but then we've also probably missed the opportunity to be able to ensure that we can get something useful very quickly out. So focus is important. I always talk about number 3, drive. So we've got to have I think you touched on this maybe even earlier in the program, but like a motivation, a passion about being able to get something there and seeing a vision and walking into it. In a large institution, and we're the largest on the planet in terms of people, you've got to have either a crisis or a feeling of a compelling need to move in order to innovate and deliver. And so getting that drive is there. Number 4, execution. That means that you've got to not just have really cool technology and a really great operational set of partners, but you've got to actually orchestrate a multi-year budget process, a contractual process, and mechanisms to make that work, and multiple stakeholders to get it to happen. So, I've made the mistake of focusing too much on that or too much on the tech. You got to have the right balance, to be able to be successful. And kind of lastly, I'll just say we've got to have people, the seers, the people with the vision, and then the doers, and they have to come together very quickly. And I'll just end on that one. I think with it's helpful to put a little Christmas to it. I've been able to do a few things. Like one, for example, partnering with commercial industry. I had my team bring in 6 new commercial space companies with Earth observation capabilities, either signals or imagery. And in 2 weeks, literally, we were able to pull in feeds from 6 companies and integrate that data together. This wasn't a multi-year process, right? This is tangible and real, data that we can do. So I know it's possible. It's been done. You just have to have those 5 elements in place to do it.
That's fantastic. You want a job? No, seriously.
I've got the best job on the planet.
No, fair enough. I mean, just outstanding. I mean, that is the success to commercial businesses as well. So you've nailed, the key issues of focusing on the customer, the end user, right? How often do commercial companies go out and they've got this great idea, they work in a silo, and they come out with this, what they think is the ultimate thing, and the customer goes, not really, right? So understanding the customer, and that's important at TMGcore here as well. We think about that. Start with the customer, what's the need, and then work backward, right? And solving problems, pain points. Outstanding. General Raymond, Chief of Space Operations, has asked about how adversaries are increasing space, the risks, capabilities as well to aid their long-range kill chain. What are some ways the U.S. and its industries can get ahead of the adversaries and maintain space superiority, protect our assets? I assume you think this is important as well, yeah?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of working with some amazing individuals out in the field, and certainly Secretary Kendall, my boss, and General Raymond and General Brown, my 2 military bosses, are just phenomenal. So they are both passionate about preventing problems and also solving problems. And so General Raymond's just one of the best at that. And so it's an honor to be able to support him and work delivering capabilities for the Space Force here. So yeah, space is essential. Almost nothing these days either relies on space, goes through space, leverages space, so on and so forth. And I know we're talking to perhaps a space crowd here, so that's not going to be a surprise, talking point to anybody here. But for us, as we think about it, space, if you look at sort of focusing on space itself and maintaining peace and security, which maybe we can get back to later, is really important. So space domain awareness, understanding what is there, what's moving, what's changed, and detect any potential nefarious behavior to ensure peace and stability, which sort of underwrites a lot of the burgeoning space economy around the globe, not just for the United States. And we've been doing that with so-called conjunction assessment analysis and support for ages, right, now doing that. So, domain awareness is sort of that underlying foundation that everybody relies on, both for day-to-day operations as well as preventing nefarious behavior. But it's even more than that, just sensing and awareness, right? You got all the things that we would talk about to support actions, whether that's removing people from harmful situations or conducting conflicts. You got to have data and artificial intelligence, cyber protection and capabilities and communications, and that's no different in space than it would be in the air or on the ground. Our unique opportunity and challenge here is to essentially extend that technology that we have in this sort of peacetime pervasive cloud data AI pipe environment we have here normally, and just move that all the way out to the edge, out to space, and even beyond what we normally think about space, as our commercial partners are just starting to just really open the envelope for what the potential is out there. And so those are things that are really important to ensure both our peace and security, but also that of really all the globe and our partners and allies.
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the things that transformation from technology that you just mentioned that's happening here terrestrially, right? And then being able to make that leap or that step and take that technology to space. One of the things that we here at TMGcore have been seeing over the last couple of years is that transition from, okay, we can do that here, and that's great. You know, cybersecurity and other types of technologies, high performance computing in particular, because that's where we fall into. And then they're saying, hey, how do we take that into space? LEO, satellite and outside, and then, on missions. And now, we've had conversations earlier today where we're talking about, actually putting people and working on the moon. And how does that technology translate from here to there and those challenges? So that's a really interesting observation. There have been a heavy focus on the Space Force standing up collaborations with industry, commercial space industry in particular, and specifically around the space threats that exist. And we're working with small businesses. I suspect you're working with small businesses as well. You mentioned that earlier. What are your thoughts on any additional ways that the United States Air Force and the United States Space Force can take advantage of this commercial industry? And do you have any advice for industry partners? I'm sure there's a number of them on the call today. I've been participating. They're anxious to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, JD, I'm glad you asked it. So I think, we've just got to be, as government individuals, we've got to be humble that the balance of power in an understanding of capabilities in this area has largely shifted in the last 20 plus years from the military to the commercial sector. That's not a bad thing. So the military is going to maintain bespoke areas that are of particular interest, but that's great that we've been able to now leverage opportunities in the commercial world. That's what our country and our friends and allies provide us. And being able to do dual use capabilities is just essential. So I think, number one is just not being so arrogant to think that we have to look inside of our island to be able to know what's possible and how to ingest it. I'll quickly say, I think about four categories that are always in my mind or lenses as I think about, this kind of question. One is I want to make sure we're integrating things like partners. So our academic institutions, federally funded research centers, university research centers, and so on that are there to provide, in some cases, congressionally directed technical expertise and links with industry. Primes, we've got companies who've made it their total dedicated mission, either new primes or older primes, to be able to support the national security enterprise. Prospects, probably largely a category that you're thinking of with the question. That's sort of my keyword for thinking about new entrants to the market. Exactly. Or dual use technologies. Exactly. We've had great success on the prospect front here. When we really kicked AFWorks into gear and set up AF Ventures, our first year we added 700 new companies that had never been part of the ecosystem before into the ecosystem. Now on the venture side, we've seen 5 times the investment from venture capital get applied to the investment that we would put into a company. And so that's just sort of multiplying the opportunities there. Now that's like the good news stories. I'm not satisfied with that yet, because I want to see that start to transition and deliver capabilities. So I think prospects are important. The last thing I'll just say, category 4 in this collaboration is pioneers. So those are looking for individuals that have done amazing work in this space to be able to both capture the vision and then grab that capability and then apply it. And so we try to be really good about a front door being to new companies, being AFWorks, SpaceWorks, and AF Ventures. And then, but one of our missions here is to continue to cross that valley. So we don't get into the valley of death here, get a lot of interest and excitement, and then don't deliver on the backside. And there's just tremendous opportunity to be able to do that. And I'm confident that we can and will with our great partners. I just want to see more of that with industry.
Yeah, Preston, I can speak firsthand on the success of one of the programs you mentioned, which is AppWorks. TMGcore is a recipient of an agreement, a contract with AppWorks, SIPR Phase 1. We're going through the SIPR Phase 2 process and MOU. And it's been an interesting process and an exciting process. And so I can speak firsthand on the acceleration that these things are happening. And to your point earlier about having this VC money come in and really drive capital into these innovative new companies, a number of which are most certainly watching today. And we've seen that similar halo effect. It's almost like a validation of a sorts, and it's helping, and it's also helping the acceleration of the innovation, which was one of the first questions we discussed.
JD, I'm glad to hear that. I think back to your first question, I think that element that I mentioned of drive. So like you can do something to start that process, but what we've started doing is focusing on forced integration of technology. So getting that out, even if it's a minimum viable capability to operators, that if we can tie that more strongly to these new entrants into the market and pull them in, then we've got not just sort of like a push process from the tech and SIBRs up, but we've got a pull from the operators.
Yes, exactly,
and you've got a sense of urgency. So I'm excited about the potential. We just got to walk through the door.
Yeah, and I'm feeling, and I think some of my colleagues in the industry are also feeling more of a pull. It's not as hard to push up the hill anymore. So thank you for that, and the hard work that you're putting in and your colleagues are putting in to support those types of activities. Another question here. So again, this is similar. Are there any near-term strategies or policies that will help the U.S. Air Force, U.S. Space Force work more closely with other branches of the service to take advantage of the technology that exists within external commercial organizations?
Yeah, well, so we've got a great Deputy Secretary of Defense and Secretary Hicks, and so she's been a great advocate and supporter of us who are trying to not just go it alone on everything, but to be able to look either how to break down the proverbial stovepipes or be able to collaborate more. I kind of harken back to my original point about collaboration. I think we've got to not be so egocentric that both we as a government know everything, but then also we as services or departments would know everything either. And so you kind of got to check those egos at the door. And I think that helps on a number of reasons. So sometimes I'll use an analogy like I enjoy photography. So if you want to put an object in view, you know how if you can turn the aperture of the camera, all of a sudden the background blurs and the object is in focus out in front of you. And the amazing thing when humans love to be creative and drive towards real tangible problems, the amazing thing that happens when you turn that camera and focus on it, all of a sudden those inhibitions and sand in the gears begin to sort of back away, and everybody's focused on solving a particular problem that's really important. So you're motivated and energized, and you sort of forget those sort of silly competition and distractions there and start to work together. So in space, we're seeing that a lot. We're seeing great partnerships at the service chief level, transferring capabilities into the Space Force from different services. That could be a difficult scenario, and it's just really awesome to watch great collaboration amongst the chiefs doing that and fostering those areas. We're also trying to do collaboration on things where we've done, like in the software world, we've got a tremendously capable platform one for development, security, and operations, or DevSecOps, that we're happy to share with anybody inside and outside of DoD, and we're seeing tremendous gains there. We're also partnering really closely on communications pathways and making space transport of data sort of a strong area. And those are just ways that either we can contribute and partner or others can. And then one that maybe doesn't get talked about a lot, of course, Space Force is also the newest entrant to the intelligence community, which provides us a venue not just within the Defense Department, but in the broader national security community as well, and intelligence, to be able to both bring and receive capabilities that maybe sort of otherwise would not have been thought of in the sphere, but now we can do that.
Interesting. The Space Force being considered an intelligence arm or intelligence agency. That's the first time I've heard that. likely because I'm not in your circles, but it's very interesting. For me, that's the first. Consider that. I need to let that wash over me a bit. Very good. Okay, another question here. Besides SAM.gov, is there a way for the U.S. Air Force, United States Space Force industry to encourage more collaboration? And so, for example, how do you get the message out? Besides things like American Future Series, which this is a fantastic venue, by the way, overwhelming, but it's once and it's twice, 3 times a year. How do you get the message out?
Yeah, it's it's interesting. So when I came back to the government about 2.5 years ago or so, and began to sort of have a foot in the acquisition and requirements phase, which I hadn't had an opportunity to sort of participate in before, in as depth as I've got now. And of course, I get this great view of where we've got, as you mentioned earlier, about $65 billion worth of programs, both in development and procurement and sustainment. So you get to see a whole lot. And I was kind of astounded just across the Defense Department about just sort of the distance between the end user and the requirer, acquirer, and the builder. And so one of sort of my personal pushes here is to work to bring those together, so that the distance between the person procuring and building is very little, and maybe zero, between the person that's going to operate and use it. And that's because inside we've historically had this usual process of analyze for a couple of years, write some things down on paper, pass it over a transom, wait for some budget, then start working. And that's a multi-year process, and everyone's changed jobs in that time frame. The technology has changed, adversaries have changed, and so we just end this infinite loop of frustration. I share with that internal story because you got to understand the dynamics that happen inside this to sort of talk about, well, how can government then partner better and more closely and communicate those challenges with industry? We've got our own challenges that we have as well. So you got to start with an appreciation that is not always the case, but that's sort of the normal process. So I tried to just bring the two ends of that together. You mentioned that's what the commercial world does. Like, yeah, I'm not a genius. That's just what works. So, we should be doing that too. And so if you can make people who in the past may be in charge of running or buying a system, but have never actually talked to a real live operator before, that was a little uncomfortable for me. So, bringing those together and faster inside the government is really important. Okay, let's extend the aperture. So not just inside the government. Now we've got to then move outwards. One other leg of the stool here that helps both inside and then outside is we've been making a push. You've heard a lot of talking points about digital engineering, digital architecture, cloud-based, collaborative environments, digital engineering as a service. Lots of talk. It hasn't delivered as much as we would hope, largely because it's way hard to do this kind of stuff at multiple classification levels with clouds of different maturity. Okay, that said, certainly my team at the Chief Architect Office and others are driving to make that a reality. And this is essential, and we're having great success in limited programs. Now we walk through the door to make it larger programs. What does that mean? Well, that means that instead of having a static document with fixed in stone kind of requirements, you have the opportunity to provide digital models, digital requirements, and to be able to share those back and forth with industry and with government, and provide an information technology environment to be able to have those conversations real time with actual data and put that into analytical tools and models to see the operational outcomes of those capabilities. Okay, when you put the bringing together of operators and force designers and requirers together, and then you pull together the sort of removing the sort of human out of the loop paper documentation that takes time, you've now got an opportunity to bring all the people at the table that are necessary. And you've got a technical mechanism that you can use to be able to share data and change it very easily without large, punching a bunch of disks out and then sending it forward or printing. Okay, so where are we doing that? Very tangibly, even yesterday, we had a space conference run by our Space Warfighting Analysis Center, which is working to be able to share and receive digital models of the force design more effectively. We want to be able to share elements that can be abstracted of potential, threats and uncertainties out there to be able to inform developers so that you can be more mindful of the concerns that we have. And so if you have these sort of three legs of the stool, more interaction, digital-based information that can be matured and changed, and then a government team that isn't multifurcated across the process, you can actually have some success. This does not need to be this hard, and sometimes it just is when you're working with the government. So I guess my last message to those listening and just to say thank you for your perseverance and patience as we work forward to be a tremendous and preferably first preferred customer of many of you. And like you said, we're non-dilutive when we invest resources there, so that should be an attractive thing, but we don't want to be a painful thing. And so that, these are elements that we're trying to work forward to be able to bring those communities together and share more clearly both the concerns and threats that we're worried about, as well as our needs, and to try to make it more of a partnership than a linear process over a long period of time.
Yeah, you said a lot, and this collaborative, fluidity that you're talking about that allows for real-time, collaboration. That's very unique in your world. It's become more and more prevalent in the commercial side of things. It's how you get things done, right? You fail fast. You bring the right people to the table. You collaborate. You create healthy tension. You get feedback loops quickly, and then you innovate and you continue down. Versus the old paper way, right? Shuffled over. I suspect, not unlike commercial, where you're concerned about IP, you're concerned about security, things like that. Some of those are some challenges and some barriers with that type of fluidity, that type of exchange. And so I suspect you're addressing those challenges, and it sounds as if you're going full bore towards doing that. So that's fantastic. And companies like TMGcore and some of the other folks, most certainly on this call, will enjoy participating in those programs. One last question I have for you here. So based on all of your experience, broad experience, by the way, I love your t-shirt. It's fantastic. You weren't as dapper as the last time we spoke. You look fantastic. So, in all of your experience, working with programs such as the ones you just discussed, and also, these programs that are leading the next generation initiatives, specifically in space, what do you see, the near future? In your opinion, what does the near future look like in space programs and in the resulting collaborations between commercial space organizations?
Yeah, JD, thanks, and great question. Let's start with the t-shirt, right? So we've got a press start. So, space is literally boundless. The opportunities and potential are limitless, but they're not a given. And so, knowing that there's tremendous potential in the space economy, and yet it can be on a sort of a hanging balance here as we go forward, because as new opportunities happen, new challenges and new risks enter. And so that opens the sort of the corridors for opportunities for either individuals or nations that don't share the same values and ideals of freedom and security and cooperation that we do. And so that sort of limitless potential drives in to think through, how do we think about the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac who provide stability and security to mortgage? What's that equivalent for space or equivalent for the maritime environment that we've had to work through? That's something that's going to become increasingly important in space, and that sort of assurance of stability and security is the foundation in general, not just in space, that we have of being able to have things like stable markets and opportunities for companies to compete with an understanding of what the rules of the road are going to be. And that just enables and opens up tremendous opportunities for entrepreneurship and creativity going forward. And so, whether we're talking about space manufacturing, more people in space, beyond space, not just looking down from space and observing the Earth, these are things that are even just a couple years ago, were not at our fingertips. But thanks to a handful and increasingly more handfuls of companies that are really reaching literally for the stars is enabling us to be able to do that. We in the Space Force and Air Force community then will see our role in not only enabling and using that capabilities to provide peace and security for this country and our allies and partners on the globe, but we also feel a tremendous sense of responsibility to ensure that we can provide that continued reliable, secure, and stable space economy, just as we have down here, terrestrially for ages and for a long time. And so that's something that we in the Space Force take very seriously. Both can leverage capabilities, but also want to enable the flourishing of a space economy that's literally in front of us right now. It was just as we as a nation walk into it.
Absolutely, Preston, from your mouth to God's ears, right? So, I say we all collectively just press start right now and get going.
Hashtag press start. There you
Hashtag press start. And we're going to wrap up here. If you could say, and also someone said, agile is the way to go. We use agile at TMGcore all the time, for that type of thing. So I'm sure you guys are embracing that. Before we go, last thing, if you could just reiterate the 5 key factors for the folks here that are listening in that you referenced at the beginning of our discussion, and we'll end with that.
Oh, you're going to test my memory now. Okay, so number 1, vision and expertise. Number 2, focus. Number 3, drive. Number 4, execution. And number 5, the right people.
Fantastic. Thank you very much,
Press start.
Preston. Please. Yeah, press start. Let's do it. Thank you, Preston. Appreciate it.
Thanks, JD. Great discussion.
Bye-bye.
Well, gentlemen, that was pretty good stuff. And I'll tell you what, Preston, David would like your T-shirt. He likes that.
There needs to be a link to where we could all get the press start T-shirt. I want
There
one
you
of those.
go. JD and Preston, above and beyond. That was great.
Yeah,
That was good stuff. That was good stuff.